Through the mists comes forth RPGaDay! In the year 2021, RPGaDay comes back for its 8th year. A time in August when every day we tackle another question or topic by answering in a way that uplifts the gaming community and answers questions people might have about this crazy hobby of ours that serves to build the community and bring it up, that many of us make blogs about, video blogs, art, or great works. In celebration of the community of gamers, I welcome you to RPGaDay 2021. Hello friends, I am Rob the Dungeon Tutor, sometimes Omnisci, here with another RPGaDay. Today is the 26th of August, which means it's the 26th topic. Today, the topic is the word theory. Now, theories can be fun. They can be endlessly debated, but generally are best for things that are speculative, primarily. For instance, the theory that certain things are possible, different universes, different dimensions, are all things that are theoretical in nature because they're darn hard to prove, especially with empirical evidence. So, you may have a theory about time travel. Maybe you love the great H.G. Wells time machine story. Maybe you just think it's cool that somebody could go back in time and watch great events as they happen, or perhaps go forward in time and see how things will turn out. That scares me almost as much as anything, honestly. Great stories have been wrung out of the possibilities of things like time travel, like the butterfly effect. If you change one little thing, the echoes can go on through history and irreparably change everything you know. There are a number of elements to different theories that can be fun to discuss and fun to enact, but role-playing games really give us an opportunity to play around with those things in a way that is really hard to enjoy in any other way other than the theoretical debating of such. So, for example, time travel is fine and it makes for an entertaining story. If you put it into a movie or something, maybe you come up with some MacGuffin that allows it to happen, like a flux capacitor, and time travel is possible in your story, in your world, and that might enrapture some people. But if you let somebody, say, get into that world and tinker around and play around with the concepts and possibilities, then say something with rubber history, like, the Back to the Future series, where you can go back in time and you can change the past. There's a definite danger to that, but it can be fixed relatively easily through pretty straightforward plot elements. You can enjoy that going back in time much more so than you can with something like the idea of going back in time, you step on a bug, you come back and now the world is run by squid-headed aliens that would have been the evolution rather than mammals. Sure, that can be interesting, certainly, but then you are completely throwing yourself into the narrative hands of the game master to figure out how that's all going to get adjudicated. Or maybe you have some other mechanic, like the players have a congress together and figure out, definitely squidheads would be ruling the world if that bug got stepped on. So you have lots of things that can be entertaining in those aspects, dipping into theories. There are some games that are entirely just hinge completely on a theory or an idle thought. But the ones that are grounded in some sort of pseudoscience can be a lot of fun. Time travel, as I said, can be a lot of fun. Most space, for instance, take place with the idea that faster than light travel is possible. Sometimes they say it's not because of speed, but because they can enter an alternate dimension called hyperspace and whisk between 2 points without having to travel through all of those points. Maybe it's wormholes that allow you to go from one point to another, seemingly going a short distance, but actually covering light years of distance. Some interesting theories, certainly, that make some of these games possible. The central conceits of some games can be based around theoretical principles. And I'm not saying that there aren't really smart people who think these things up. There are. As soon as somebody came up with the concept of wormhole, scientists went around trying to prove that it was possible. And it sounds like, at the very least, that it might be plausible, interestingly enough. And a lot of constructs that were at one point theoretical sound more and more like they have a lot of evidence behind them, even if they're still technically in theory because they can't be directly empirically observed. The idea of black holes, for instance, and exactly what the experience of a black hole would be. We can theorize all day. They can test and test and test, but we really would have an almost impossible time getting good empirical data that might prove the theory into a law or a fact. So playing around with all of those theories can be fun. They can be fertile ground for role-playing games, certainly. Almost as much fun as legend and myth and other elements and conceits that we hold for these games. But out of all of them, I think my favorite is probably, despite the fact that I generally despise time travel used in most media, because it's generally overused and is, I consider, to be relatively lazy writing. Because once you open up that can of worms, it's almost impossible to put the lid back on. If I can time travel and change the world, a la, say, the Superman solution to the end of the very first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve, why don't I do that whenever anything bad happens? Seriously, what does the extent have to be that I have to not fly around the world so fast the world goes backwards on its axis and time goes back, which is stupid. It was a dumb idea. But what's to stop me from doing it again? That can of worms has been opened. If you say that it was possible, what event has to happen before I go and do that again? It's, obviously the trigger point was Lois Lane dying. So if that is the crucial element, every time she is in danger, he can risk going back in time again. You know. The same thing with, and the ultimate answer, of course, for the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie. It's like, wow, something really bad happened. Romulus was, Vulcan was ultimately just destroyed by this terrible act. We need to go back in time and stop it. And they sent Spock, and, it's time travel. We know time travel exists in the Star Trek universe. So why not use it to solve something absolutely horrifying that happened? And they use that principle. They use that theory as it is now a law in their canon and explore what you can and can't do with that. So would it make sense then, after the crew of the Enterprise go back in time and they find out what happened, try to get the heck out of there so they go back in time even further and stop that thing from happening? Yeah, that becomes a valid plot idea every time, and when they don't use it, you need to have reasons for that. You need to have a deeper thought than just that the theory that it's possible exists. Now it exists. You have to think of all the ramifications. It's tricky. Like I said, can of worms, trying to stuff everything back in. But that's my thoughts on theory. Kind of dangerous, but exciting, and a venue for plenty of gaming opportunities. So that's my thought. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope that you'll join me next time. If you have any particular theories that spawned endless ideas for games, let me know. Comments below. I'd love to hear from you and chat about it. But until next time, thanks for joining me, and farewell.